Here we go. Doing an impromptu analysis. I actually got an off market deal, so I want to kind of look at it. I'm going to show you some of the things that I go through. Obviously, with me being a licensed broker, I have some resources that I have access to, like the MLS, right? Some of you guys have access to that at even if you work with another agent. But then I got some other things that I use to kind of pull reports and look at analysis so that I can actually gather all the information. So, what I typically do when I get an address, I do go to the MLS. So, this is the property that I'm looking at. So, what I would do is in this situation, I'm going to pull um, the MLS report so I can have the information on the property, and then I'm going to get some pictures that are updated, and then I'm going to get the tax information. So this is something that I use in just learning a little bit more, doing my in-depth research on it. So this is typically what I do. Again, I just get this information so that I can use the calculator that I created through Aspire. It's called the Aspire Beast Council. It's something that we kind of created for the Aspire group so that individuals can analyze property and not just put numbers in something and then it just spit out more numbers, but the calculator actually tries to have a conversation with you so that you can better understand the deal. Oh, we already have some stuff. So you can better understand the deal and actually have a conversation with it, right? So you can understand why something's not working. What information should you gather so that you would better understand the deal? All right, I gotta go find it. I love when things doesn't always go according to plan. You gotta adapt, right? You gotta be quick on your feet. So obviously I analyze a lot of deals, so I already have some stuff. So I already have the MLS tag, so I'm just gonna do that again. So the next thing that I like doing as well is I like pulling the CMA. So I kind of already started. I already got it lit up. So this is what I did. I'm a radius of 25.25 miles, and then I have a radius of zero point 0.5 miles. So it gave me 34 properties. You know, you got some that's currently on the market, and you got some that already sold, which, you know, the sold really helps with the ARV, right? So I have that information. So what I would do now is I pulled it. So this is it right here. This is the CMA, so I'm gonna gather that information. So now the next thing that I do, again, this is because I have these resources. Work with a real estate agent. You can work with me, a broker, and you can have some of these resources. So now I'm gonna put it in here, and this is a realtor property resources. Again, this is something where a real estate broker, a real estate agent should have this information. So obviously, you're going to eventually need to run into an agent to buy property, right? You can only do so many off market and do personally. Once you do over five, you need to have a license anyway. So eventually, you got to make the decision if you're going to find an agent you work with or you got to eventually get your license. And that's sometimes why some people, investors get their license because they know they're going to be buying more than five properties in 1 year and you need to have a license. So I'm gonna start this CMA, right? I'm starting down this process. This gives me some more stuff, right? This gives me a little bit more information than the other CMA, so that's why I like using this one. It kind of gives me some sales numbers. It kind of gives me some income background in the area. It gives me a little bit more in detail of information. It also picks up different properties at times. So I'm gonna go back a year. They have 8 bedrooms in this one, right? That's insane. So I'm still going to bring in the four because I just want to know what's around it, and obviously, so we can get because there's not going to be that many 8 bedroom, and there's not going to be that many, even six duplexes. So again, I'm just going through this. So right, this is a 6 bedroom. So I'm just gonna pick the properties that are close to it. That's giving me information. Again, you want data, right? And the more properties you get, the more things around, the more data you can. So even though this is another CMA, it gives me different information, right? It's going to provide different information. It's going to give me different properties that the other MLS didn't give me, right? So I'm just going to be picking some properties around here. Now, obviously, you want to have some barriers, right? You know, people tend to say, a highway is a barrier. So I'm not going to pick any of these properties over here. Now, appraisal might pick those properties, right? And you might need to use them, right? So I'm just going to pick these properties, right? I feel like I have a decent amount. I'm going to go a little deeper so I can get this other one over here, right? So that's 290, right? So that's what I wanted. I have a clutter. So I pretty much got in this box right here. So, right, this is the box that I'm analyzing. Now, I could get some of these. I'm choosing not to right now. Now, as I'm going to research, maybe I realize, like, hey, maybe I need those. So, like, we have a number from 85,000 to 354. I think that's a decent amount. So, some people might say, hey, you're being selective. Well, appraisals, they pick three properties, right? And they pick three properties that are similar to that property, and that's how they pick it. They might pick some more. They probably could get up to six, or probably use 10, but they tend to just narrow it down from the ones they use and then use that appraisal at times. So you want to just gather as much information you can so that you can estimate, right, what an appraisal would do, right? So if you're doing the BRRRR method, that's what you need, right? The BRRRR is going off the what the value of the property should be after you fix everything up, right? So, and they are going to use what's been happening around you to assess that, right? So, gathering as much information as you possibly can so that you can do what is necessary, right? Sorry about that. Real life, right? Doing real life stuff. Uh, so I have a template that I kind of use. I call it my valuation report. So that's what I'm going to be using right here. And so it's going to be pulling that up. So this report is a lot, right? So like, again, this report, I tend to say I give this to the nerds of my investors who want to get all that information, all that data. So that's partly what I use this information for. So this goes way more in depth. So like I said, it gives you more information than just the CMA, right? It's breaking everything down. It just gives so much more information. It gives you market trends, right? The other one didn't give me market trends. This is going through December active listings. That didn't do that. It is breaking it down, right? So again, this is 78 pages. The other one was probably 5 pages. So I'm going to start downloading this one, and then I'm going to go to my final place that I get information, and this is Rentometer. This is where I kind of like to get my rental information. I'm going to use 1 through 4 because, again, I want to kind of see what other rents are around there, because I don't believe I'm going to get a lot of 4-1s, right? So I want to look at all the information so I can gather get the most data possible, right? So again, some of this stuff can be funky, right? Because like the 3-bedroom average is 1,200, and then the 1s and 2s is 13. So I always like to go back and see if I can do a different one, and it seems more reasonable. See, again, this is weird because I picked apartments, but it's saying the 3-bedroom is like 1,100. So I like to use all because it just gathers a lot more information. Again, I'll probably be using some of this other information, like to try to get the best one. So like I think this kind of is correct, and it's a 4-bedroom. You probably can get this. Like I would probably say it's between here, right? And the 3-bedroom is probably around this amount. I can see the 2-bedroom around this amount, and then I would use something around this area for the 1-bedroom in that areas, right? So you just gather information, right? It's a bunch of information. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, so you got to dig into a little bit more. So I'm gonna pull this one. I'm gonna pull this report, and again, I'm gonna show you how I can pull this information in a little bit later to provide that information. So again, I'm going to save this information because this is the rental report. And so again, this is how I do it, guys, and this is how my system that I have kind of going right now. So this report is done now. So I'm gonna save this one. Right. So I'm gonna go find that one. 2611 2nd Street. And I'm gonna save this as the evaluation report. So again, now that I have all the 4 reports in Riley, that's all the vital information that I kind of have that will help me. So now I'm gonna go and use this one, right? So bring me a deal. So like I have little things on here where you can kind of ask it. Is it gonna present itself? And then, like I said, it's having a conversation with you. So obviously that is not what I wanted to do. So I'm gonna reset it. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the address in there. So I'm gonna put the address. I'm gonna put the whole address that I have of this listing. Normally, what I would do is I would upload some of these files that I just did, but I'm gonna do them at certain points. So right here, I'm gonna load up the MLS report that I pulled. Right. So seeing behind the scenes. So we'll go a little quicker here. So 2611, right? 2611 2nd Street. So I'm gonna pull the MLS and I'm gonna say use document to answer. Here, this is what I'm gonna do. This is off the cuff. So I'm gonna just give it the information first, right? So I'm gonna just put the address in. This is just like anyone else. So it's gonna go through this, and because I didn't tell it a little bit in other information, it's gonna assume that you are a novice investor. So like you're kind of new, you're learning, and you're growing from that standpoint. Um, the cool thing about it is that sometimes what it will do is pull images of the neighborhood, and sometimes it will pull images of the actual property. So like it just gives you a perspective of what's around you and things of that nature. So it's asking me certain stuff. So, like for example, next require inputs. So it's going to ask you for things that you can put in there, right? So it's going through asset type, unit configuration, current status, year built, known status. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in the MLS, and then I'm going to say I'm going to tell it it's an off market deal. Please use to gather information, right? Because normally I would, if you had this information, you would just it's still loading. Sorry, it's taking a little bit. So I'll still keep talking while we finish this. So obviously, if you know some of this information, you can just put it in there. Obviously, because I am I gathered that information through MLS and was able to get some of these answered. That's because it's already in this thing that's going to do it. So I'm just going to use that, right? And so that is going to give me the information. So the cool thing about Aspire that it actually goes according to an acronym. So A is for asset and address and asset. So taking in that information. And then S is for seller situation. So it's pretty much looking for the seller situation. I don't know what's going on right there. Let me try this again. It's only 800. It shouldn't be taking that long to load up. There we go. So now that we have that in there, it's going to take this information and it's going to read it. So I'm telling it it's off market deal. Please use PDF to gather information. So it's going to use this to gather the information as much as it possibly can to answer the question. So it's going to go back and verify the address and things of that nature and take everything from the MLS because, well, agents, that's what they're supposed to do, right? They're supposed to provide good information for accurate information, right? Truthful information that you got to put on the internet. So it's going to take all that stuff right now. It knows all these things and it's verified because I gave it an actual document or something from you, right? So the system is created so that it will say it will keep moving forward with, but it'll say unverified. And then if you didn't give it the information, it's going to dock you points. So that's one of the things that this built up is that it's supposed to give you points as you put in information. The more information you have, the more points you will get. So even though the deal might not work, it's going to be lower, but it's going to give you more points because you got the information to ensure you're getting an accurate outcome, right? Good data in, good data out. Bad data in, bad data out, right? So because this is off market deal, right? We're going to say I got to answer when somebody's going to provide these 5 items, right? So I do know some of the information, so this is what I'm going to do. I got to gather some of this information. Hold on one second. Right? This is real life. Sorry. I'm getting the information. So here we go. It's occupied. tenant occupied month to month, 1,300 and 1,400. It says bank loan. Okay, so that's the information they gave me. They OBO is 192,500. So I gave you some information that is going to actually go into some other stuff, right? So this is the address of the asset, the seller situation provided, off-market deal, tenants are month to month, finance bank loan acceptable, seller exception, OBO is 192, right? So price and purchase assumption, this is what it is, as is 192, closing cost 3%. So it already gave that, right? So unless I tell it something, it's kind of just going to give that information. So improvements, I'm going to say we need to improve it. So I think I 45K in rehab. So that's what but see what it's going through. So that's the one thing I want to change. So it's going to change things, but we're just going to keep going through right now. So our revenue verified, like they are giving this. So unit one is 1,300, unit two is 1,400, gross rent is 2,700, gross annual rent is 32, vacancy is 5%. So effective gross income 30,000, estimated net operating income is $20,000. So it's getting a lot of this information from using, so like they're using 35% for maintenance and operating expenses. So right, so estimated gross income is the EGI, obviously right there, and then the estimated net operating income. And then we're going to debt assumption 75%, loan amount 144, rate 7.25, term 30. So I'm gonna change that again too. So DSCR loan is 20,000 divided by the 11,000 is 1.68. So it meets the DSCR loan threshold that you need. So exit the best. So this is the other cool thing about this is that it'll give you all the 5 strategies that you can possibly use, right? Buy and hold, BRRRR, which it can sometimes fall into the same thing. Flip, wholesale, creative financing. So the reason why both buy and hold and BRRRR is a little bit different is because buy and hold doesn't necessarily take into consideration you need to refinance, right? So it's just basically saying you're buying it, you can hold it, you can put the down payment and get fix everything and all that stuff, and you don't need to refinance to pull that money out. Now you might do it later on, but it's not part of the initial strategy. Where BRRRR, you're taking into consideration that is the strategy, right? So I'm gonna say DSCR loan. Well, now I'm gonna say hard money loan 4.14%. So it's going to kind of understand all this, and then I want to use BRRRR method. So I'm telling it with the strategy I want to do, even though it kind of gave me. So I'm trying to update it. So I'm updating the I. So I just put I and said it's going to be a $45,000 rehab. So it's kind of still giving the stuff. So it's going to say, hey, this is still what they were looking for. This is the address. This is the purchase price. Hard money improvements. And then it's going to kind of break it down and say, okay, if we purchase it at that, we do a rehab, we got points, we got this, the interest for 6 months, closing miss. So then total all in is 264. It doesn't sound like, some of the things we looked. So appraisal needs to be 353. So that's 75%. So that's what it needs to be. So it needs to appraise out at 353 if we're going to be all in 264. If refi occurs at 350, then new loan is 260, which still leaving a little money on the table there. So now it's so it does certain things. So now the council is going to kill switch is activated. So it's basically saying this deal doesn't work at what we're giving them, right? And that's the whole point of this, showing of this calculator and how useful it is and how it kind of shows things of that nature of how to actually work through a deal and the things you're kind of looking at to analyze something to better understand it. So right now, it's telling you how you can salvage this. Well, if I change the price to 165 That lowers the ARV, which then into the 300,000 range. It reduced capital costs, negotiate 2 points and or 10, 11 rate. Every 1 point save is 1,900, right? So then the hybrid hold strategy, use hard money only for rehab, refinance into the SCR loan without cash out expectations. So now it's just telling you different ways of you can salvage this deal, right? So then it's basically saying, hey, this is not a bad deal. It's just what it's currently at makes it not a functional deal for you, right? So, and that's the parameters that I put in there. There's certain things that need to hit. So basically, the verdict is it's on sand. The premise is building on sand and solid foundation, right? So they're saying that this deal is building on sand based on the information you right have, right? So then it tells you counsel finds the BRR relies on perfect appraisal execution, hard money costs to consume margin disproportionately, and no verified ARV supports the required refinance threshold. So now it says, well, this is what you can do: produce 3 closed comps supporting 350 if you stayed at this, obtain refi term sheet before closing their hard money, retrade price, or restructure capital stack. Do not close without exit certainty. So it gives you things to work on to better understand what is going on. Again, this is an off-market deal. Obviously, I had some information that I could use. It gave me some other stuff, right? I didn't use all the files that I actually downloaded because I had some information. But if we wanted to go in a little bit deeper, I could provide those things and see, let's go to the next step. So in future videos, I'm going to show how I go a little bit deeper in some of this and say, okay, let's restructure it. And then if it's an actual deal, I'm going to show you how the calculator can actually help you produce the email that you can send to the agent or the off-market person or the wholesaler, whoever is involved, the actual seller. And then this will just provide us, an opportunity where, hey, you know how to move forward now because you have the actual information that you need to put together into an email to start the process of actually negotiating, right? So thank you again. I'm just really trying to provide resources, provide an opportunity for you guys to, get the encouragement to go after this real estate, and it's just putting in the work, right? It's doing the reps, right? Just analyzing deals. And even when it's a bad deal, is you learn why was it a bad deal and how can we make it a better deal next time. All right. Well, thank you again for taking the time to listen. I look forward to speaking with you guys in the future and sharing more of these analyzing deals in the future. Beleza.